Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Sports Porch. I hope that you are all doing well. And with the NFL season coming up, we are exactly 32 days from the start. Thursday, September 9th, I believe, is the first day. So, every day until then, I've introduced not necessarily a new series, but a new set of videos coming out giving my power rankings for the NFL season. And every day until the start of the season, we are going to be going through, and I'm going to give you my power rankings essentially. So, real quick, I do want to give a shout out to Marcus Whitman, aka that franchise guy. He is doing a series of deep dives right now on his channel. That's kind of where I got the motivation to do this from. I won't go as in depth as he does on his stuff. I would recommend you go check his channel out. He makes really great football content as well. So this set of videos, we're going to take a look at a team's strengths, their weaknesses, some potential storylines for this season, and as well as some key players and even some guys to watch for fantasy for anyone who's a fan of that. So first off, I want to give an explanation. So obviously there's 32 teams and they're ranked, which is fine, but I've also got some tiers for each category of team and where they fall into. And as we go up the tier system, then you'll start to see where these teams fall in place. So my first tier at the top is Super Bowl contenders. That one's pretty obvious. Tier number 2 is fringe of contention. These are teams that are one piece away for me from being a true contender, whether it be on their coaching staff, such as offensive coordinator or head coach, or just the talent level. They're missing like one more key guy at a position. Number 3 is they're missing a few pieces / that it factor. So for a great example of this for me is the Dallas Cowboys, who, I mean, they have good pieces, but they're just missing that it factor for me. They're missing a couple of guys maybe, or just, that it factor to really push them over the edge to be either a contender or a team who could win a Super Bowl. But they're good enough to make the playoffs, they're going to have a winning record, all that sort of stuff. Then at number 4, an outside chance / everything has to go right to make the playoffs. This means that a team has a lot of pieces that they need, or major question marks or problems with their coaching or just the overall roster talent. They're really going to need everybody else to have a bad year in their division in order to have a chance even to make the playoffs. Number 5, non-factors with interesting pieces to watch. Great example of this right now is the Jets with Zach Wilson, the Jags with Trevor Lawrence. Something you can really look forward to in the future for your team. And then number 6, bottom dwellers who are waiting for 2022 to start. Just to spoil it, there are only 2 teams in this tier, and it'll be pretty obvious to figure out which one of those, which those 2 are, especially in the next 2 days. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it and start with number 32, as you'll probably already know from the title of this video, that being the Houston Texans. Now, just real quick, looking at their coaching / front office, Nick Caserio comes in for his first year at GM. David Culley comes in his first year at head coach as well, after Bill O'Brien got fired from both roles. You also have Tim Kelly staying as the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinators Lovie Smith coming in for his first year, and Frank Ross as special teams coordinator. So there's going to be a lot of threes in this series. So 3 strengths for this team. I will admit it was kind of hard to find any, but I did find some. So first off, their running back room is actually pretty decent. You've got David Johnson, who he's not quite what he used to be, but he's better than nothing. Phillip Lindsay is a solid piece there. Mark Ingram is a really good power back for them, especially having guys like Johnson and Lindsay who are more finesse players, better in the receiving game. And then they also do have Rex Burkhead here, who he is, I know, a non-factor right now, but he is a good 4th running back to have on your team. Another strength of this team could be David Culley. He could really reset the culture at this place, get some optimism in the building, things of that nature. He could really help them out in that regard. We'll have to wait and see. And then I would also say Nick Caserio showed a lot of promise in this first offseason. I know he signed a lot of mercenaries. It was a lot of one-year deals. But I do think He brought in a decent amount of free agents who can help them win in the near future. So I think, well, yeah, it's troubling to look at just the ownership in general here, and we'll get to them in the weaknesses. I think overall what Caserio did this offseason, even with the reputation that Houston has, was a net positive overall. So then moving into 3 weaknesses for this team. Most obvious one, this is the worst roster in the NFL if they don't have Deshaun Watson on the field. It's even debatable with him on the field, they might have the worst roster, although I think the Lions would take that then. Next up, the coaches. As much as David Culley is going to reset this culture, I think we all know why he's really here. Nobody else wants to take that job. I'm sure, I heard they only reached out to Bieniemy after Deshaun Watson asked them to this past offseason. So if that doesn't give you a good indicator about how Houston goes about interviewing guys, or what their process is like in general, then I don't know what does. But David Culley doesn't really bring a lot of excitement. I said before he's going to reset the culture, which is fine. I don't think he's going to win them a lot of football games, though. And then especially Lovie Smith as defensive coordinator, running a Tampa 2 system, which is frankly just out of style in the modern NFL. It's a lot of cover 3, match quarters, things of that nature. And then the last thing I mentioned earlier, ownership really is awful. The McNair family, no one wants to play for this team. Jack Easterby's got this team wrapped around his finger, basically. And if you know anything about Jack Easterby, you know that is a bad thing for Houston going forward. And you saw with Randall Cobb when he left Green Bay, when he got traded there, he said it was like he was out of prison. So if that doesn't show you what the team is currently at, then I don't know what does. It's very reminiscent of the Washington football team in years past with Dan Snyder and Bruce Allen both being in the same building there. So those are the 3 weaknesses I have for this team. Honestly, you could probably go past that to more, but I want to limit it to 3 apiece because I do want to be a little more concise in these videos. So next up, 3 storylines and question marks heading into this season for the Texans. The first one, will Deshaun even play this season? Whether that is from the offseason struggle he's had with the Texans in terms of, them not giving him what he wants, what he promised, all this and that, or other offseason problems. I'll just leave it at that. That's kind of really a touchy subject. I don't really want to get into that on this channel. That's not what this channel is about. And then the second thing is, does Davis Mills see the field this year if Deshaun isn't playing? If you remember, he was their first pick in this year's draft after they didn't have a pick the entire draft until the 3rd round. So it raises the question, are they looking at him as a potential piece in the future, or is he just a backup plan? I don't know, honestly, because, just with how it projects next year, it's not looking too great, and I think they have to know that as well. So I am curious how they go about this with Davis Mills. I think he's got the tools to be a solid NFL starter, right? He's got all the traits. He is big. He can be accurate. He does struggle going off script at times, but that's obviously something that can be, worked on in the NFL. And then the last thing is, it kind of ties into the Davis Mills question a little bit. What are they going to do with either the number 1 or the number 2 pick going into next year, assuming that's what they're going to have? Are they going to go Spencer Rattler or Sam Howell? Or do they go best player available? Do they go with Kayvon Thibodeau? Do they go with Derek Stingley? It does, I think, kind of depend on what Davis Mills looks like going into next year. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Davis Mills take the field, at least later on in the year. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And I know I only have 3 usually, but I did want to add in this last question. How many players are going to come and go from this team next year? Because they did sign a lot of 1-year deals. There's a lot of mercenaries on this team. So I'm just curious, is it going to continue to be a rotating door? Or are guys such as, Anthony Miller, who just got traded here from Chicago, Are they going to be a part of the future of this team? So then let's get on to the 3 key players for this team. Number 1 is Deshaun Watson. He literally makes or breaks this season, and you'll see that with my floor and ceiling for the wins for the Houston Texans. He is a top 5 talent in the NFL. My top 5 quarterbacks go Patrick Mahomes 1, Rodgers 2, Wilson 3, Deshaun 4. So to be the 3rd best guy behind, dog's barking about someone opening the door. That's my list of guys that are ahead of Deshaun Watson. So that's pretty good company to be in. Obviously, he's got issues he's dealing with right now, besides just playing football for the Texans, but he is truly a generational talent at the quarterback position. Next up is Laramie Tunsil, arguably one of the best left tackles in football. Got that big contract from this team. I am curious how hard he plays now that he got this big contract. Does he sit out at any point in the year because he's playing for the Texans? We'll see. I don't really know. And then the last player I wanted to mention is Nico Collins. They just drafted him in either the 4th or the 5th round. I can't remember which. Wide receiver out of Michigan. And this wide receiver room, it's not the worst in the NFL, but it's definitely missing that it factor. Maybe if you didn't trade away DeAndre Hopkins for a 2nd round pick, you might have had that. Just saying. But there is Anthony Miller here, and you do have Brandon Cooks, who I guess is your number 1 for now. But I am curious to see what Nico Collins can do this year, if he can really establish himself as the number 2 guy on this roster. My 3 best fantasy players on this team, if he's playing, Deshaun Watson, that's pretty obvious. In my Dynasty League, one of them I'm in, he fell to super far in the draft, and I just felt like I had to take him at that point because, I mean, he fell so far, and if there's even a little bit of a chance that he plays, then, I mean, that's house money for me. Next up is Brandon Cooks. He is, as of now, the clear number 1 on this team, so in the passing game, he's going to get a lot of looks. And then I would say Anthony Miller as well. He just got traded to this team. He has a lot to prove, going away from the Chicago Bears, requesting a trade from them. So we will see with how Anthony Miller is. I also did have a slot on here for a Dynasty sleeper player. So for those of you who play Dynasty/keeper leagues, these are some guys, or this is a guy per team to look at potentially at that spot. I had 2 guys here for the Texans, and that's either Nico Collins or Davis Mills. And I think people will know Nico Collins a little bit, at least people who are somewhat into Dynasty leagues. But I think he's going to fall a decent amount. I don't remember what he was drafted in my Dynasty league. I didn't draft him. But I do think if there's a guy you're going to draft from the Texans, it's kind of hard, right? Because it is the Texans after all. But I think if you're going to pick a guy, Nico Collins or even Davis Mills could potentially be another sleeper if Deshaun really is out for as long as we say. But it also does depend on where they go with the number 1, number 2 pick next year. If Stingler or Thibodeau are drafted, great. That's great for you that you have Davis Mills. If they draft Howell or Rattler, then, well, maybe you should have just stuck with my Nico Collins pick there. So then lastly, I want to go into a little bit of a schedule overview for this team because I want to kind of separate power rankings versus schedule, right? And what their final record is going to be. I do clearly think that there's a correlation between the two, right? How well your team does depend on how good you are. But there are certain circumstances, like in the NFC East, where, spoilers, I have the Eagles fairly low, but they could end up with a pretty good record, right? Because of the fact that they play in the NFC East and there's a lot of winnable games there. So the strength of schedule for Houston, they're tied for 15th hardest in the league, basically smack dab in the middle there. Some key games for them, and at the lower end of this list, that's basically just the games that you can win as a team. Week 1, playing at home against Jacksonville. This could be a really big moment for them to be able to get a win on the year. You're at home, fans are back, whatever fans they have left in Houston. Fresh off the offseason, no rust, all that type of stuff. Really good to just set the tone for the year, come out firing. Week 3 against Carolina, is also another key game there. Dog's moving around a lot. Carolina is a young team. This is an opportunity for them to pick up another win potentially. And then I also have week 12 against the New York Jets, who are coming into town. You'll notice a lot of my win-losses are based on, first off, are you playing at home? And second off, what are your realistic chances of beating this team? But I really do take into account home and away a lot. Those really factor into how I view a team doing that week. And another thing I try to look at is teams coming off of rest, right? So, for example, I really took into account coming off a bye week, they're going to be at Tennessee, which, I mean, that's not like the worst thing in the world, but Tennessee, I think, right now is the best team in this division, so I don't think there's any real way that they're going to be able to beat them. So my prediction for this team is they go 1-16. I think that, I mean, honestly, I would say they're a no-win team, but I don't think they're that bad. I think they have enough talent where they're better than bottom dweller teams have been in the past. I have that one win coming week 1 against Jacksonville. I just think they're going to come out with a lot of fire, a lot of energy. But also watch out for week 3 and week 12 against the Panthers and the Jets, respectively. My floor for this team, 0 wins. They could easily reach that. And my ceiling for this team is actually 8 wins. I think if Deshaun Watson plays, there's a real chance they can win some of those divisional matchups. I think if Deshaun is playing, they can win both of those games against Jacksonville, if I'm being honest. Vegas's over-under for them is 4 wins. I would say if Deshaun isn't playing, take the under all day if you're a betting guy, for sure. And then just an overall final statement on this team. There's simply not enough talent here. They really gutted everybody. J.J. Watt, Will Fuller, potentially even Deshaun Watson, even just after signing a big extension, could not be playing next year. Probably, honestly. I would lean more towards him not playing next year. So they're going to regress heavily. Do not be surprised if they are a number 1 overall pick next year. So that's all I have for the Houston Texans this year. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think they'll do better? Think they'll do worse? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure you leave a like on this video and subscribe so you're never missing another NFL upload. And make sure you turn on the notification bell so you can see who my next team is going to be tomorrow. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this series. I'm really glad I'm going to be getting a chance to do this. It's going to be a good opportunity for me to research all the teams and be able to come up with sort of my own predictions for the season and be able to look at them back potentially next year. So until next time, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one.